All right, this week in our Beyond Math assignment, we are talking about maps beyond space. And really, we're talking about mapping data in our world, not maps of stars in outer space, although that is kind of a fun thing to map as well. What we're going to talk about, though, is how a map can show more than what we traditionally have shown in maps, historically anyways. Historically, maps were often used to just show a diagrammatic representation of the area of land or sea or whatever it is, and it shows physical features like streets or buildings and things like that. But maps can be used to show all kinds of different information. So we're going to look at some examples of maps that show more information than just the physical space. Here's a map of the United States that is just the physical space. In fact, this one is to scale. And you might remember learning about maps in elementary school and how they have to be to scale, right? So that this shows the actual relative size of each of the states in the United States. And usually Alaska on the maps that we see is not to scale. It often gets shrunk down and put on the bottom corner of the map. And we don't realize that how big the land area of Alaska really is. You can see that it would, if I put it right on top of the lower 48 states we call that, that it would cover up a lot of them. It's really actually pretty big land-wise. But we're going to talk about maps that aren't necessarily to scale. They might be, but they're going to show more information than just the land area. Like this one. This is another map of the United States, and of course Alaska and Hawaii are not to scale like they should be, but they fit on the map. And the point of this map is really to show the population of each of the states. So we not only get a sense of the land area and where the states are next to each other, but you also get the population of the states. And the way they do that is by color coding each of the states. States with fewer people living in them are white, and the states with the most people living in them are that dark blue, like California, Texas, Florida, and New York. So we can also show the population in a different way. The previous one was by color, but this one, the people who made this map took the size of the state and grew or shrunk it to show a representation of how many people live in each state. So again, you can see that California is pretty big. Texas is a little smaller than California in this spot, even though previously they were both the same dark colored blue. And then you can see New York and Florida are also pretty big, and you can see how let's see, Alaska is really small, right? Because not very many people actually live in Alaska. Even though the land area is really large physically, there's not very many people that live there. So in this map, Alaska is really small. This map, I think, takes it one step further. And I think because it's harder to compare the sizes of the different states in the previous map because they're all different shapes. Here, they made all the states a square, a perfect square. And they sized the perfect square based on the population. So you can really compare that California is bigger than Texas, and Texas has more people than Florida. I think New York and Florida are pretty close, but New York might be just a little bit ahead of Florida. And of course, you have Alaska that's really small up in the top. But you can really get a better sense of the comparison of each state based on population. Here's all those maps together. And again, the first one in the upper left shows just the land mass, so it's to scale based on the actual land area of each state. Then we have the color-coded map that shows the population of the states based on the color they are. The lighter states have fewer people, the darker states have the most people. And then the different sizes of the states showing the different populations, and then taking it even further and just using a square for each shape so you can really compare them. Here's another example of maps that aren't necessarily exactly showing what the land or the streets look like. This is a system map for the Link Light Rail system in the Puget Sound here that it will eventually go all the way from Everett way up north, all the way down to Tacoma, and even further past Tacoma. And you can see that the land shapes are generally there, but it's kind of an estimate of the land shape. And you can imagine that the lines that are showing the routes are kind of rough estimates of the routes as well. They're simplifications, really, of the routes that the rails actually take. They're not exact, right? And they don't show every single street that's around them or all the different features of the land, but it gives you that general idea of what the system looks like. And to take it even further, when you're actually using a subway system or a transit system like this, you can have a map that's like this. It's even simpler. It doesn't even have the land around it, but all it has is the actual stations, the actual stops. And when you're on the light rail, that's all you need to know. If I'm getting on at the Tacoma Dome way south and wanting to go all the way north to Everett Station, I know I'm going to get on that green transit line, go all the way up to, say, the International District or the Westlake Station, which is right in the middle, and transfer over. That's where I can transfer over to the red or the blue line to get north to Everett Station. And I can see how many stops are in between, so I know how many more stops I have to go before I get to where I want to go. But I don't need to know all the detail of the land around me or the other roads that are around me or exactly every curve and bend in the rail, right? It can be simplified to show me just the information I need. Here's a few more examples I'll show you. Here's one where, again, we're color coding data. So this is per capita, which means per person, carbon, CO2 emissions, which contribute to global warming. So per capita CO2 emissions for the different countries, and you can see which countries emit the most carbon per person based on the color. This one I think is really interesting. It's back to just the United States. In fact, it's just the lower 48 states. And it only shows, and it's not labeled because it's a little challenge that you can take on for yourself, it only shows how the states are situated relative to each other. So each of these little shapes represents one of the 48 states, and each shape, like for instance, this one might be Washington. I've done this before, but I can't remember all the answers. This one might be Washington because we are only bordered by two different states, Oregon and Idaho. So you can see that it shares two different states that it borders. So that's how this map works. And I'm going to download this document, so if you have a printer, you can print it out, or you can just do it on your screen and see if you can fill out all the different states to make it work. Here's another kind of map, a really different kind of map. This is what we call a contact map. And right now, with the COVID-19 virus going around, if somebody gets infected with COVID-19, what our health department officials do is create a contact map. So you can see the person in the middle is somebody that has come down and been diagnosed with the virus. And what we've done here, and this is kind of representation, they probably don't usually do these actual cartoony type pictures, but they show all the different people that that person had significant contact with. So the dotted lines connect that person with the people that they've had contact with, and then those people are also connected to other people, right? And so you could go on and on and on, but the further out you go away from the actual person that was infected, the less chance there is of contracting the virus from that central person. So we're interested in a couple layers of contact that people might have had with that person. All right, now we're getting on to personal examples. So here's a map of my apartment, right? It's the layout of my apartment. And this is the kind of thing I want you to do. I'll show you a few different examples. It can be of your home or of your neighborhood or the city of Tacoma or anything that is personal that you can relate to. So this is my apartment. When you do yours, it doesn't have to be exactly to scale. This is roughly to scale and just kind of helped me draw all the different pieces of my apartment. You can see the bedroom and some closets for some reason I labeled. The big oval on the right, that's my kitchen table, my dining table that right now is really a workspace. So you'll see in the later images that it's really where my computer is and where I'm sitting right now recording this, and my desk and workspace is there. So I took this map of my apartment and I decided to color code it based on how much time I spend in each area. It's a little bit small, but the darker the area, the darker the color is the area that I spend the most time in. And so there's that one end of my dining table that I've turned into my computer desk area, and I definitely spend the most time there these days because I'm working here and creating lessons and recording videos for you all, and planning things, and I spend lots of time there at that desk. When I have my meetings or class meetings, that's where I am too. You see the next space is that orange space. That's my bed. Of course, I spend 6 to 8 hours, 10 hours on the weekends sometimes when I'm really sleepy, but it's usually closer to 6 hours. So that's kind of the next area that I spend the most time in. And then I have a few different areas that are color-coded yellow, like the rest of my dining table where I might sit and eat, or I also have all my school supplies and books and things, and so I spend time there going through materials and planning for your lessons. And then my couch, you know, when I like to eat on the couch sometimes too and watch some TV, so it's a good place for me to relax or do jigsaw puzzles on my coffee table. I'll be sitting on the couch. And then the green areas are the areas that I spend the least time in. So you could do this by hand like I did, or you could even, if you're savvy at digital arts, digital creations, then you could do this. I even did this in Microsoft Word. I just took a picture of that map that I drew and then created these kind of colored circles in the different areas and made a key about how much time each different color represents. So that's kind of a color-coded way to show how much time I spend in each area of my apartment. I also did one where I sized, kind of like the maps of the United States that we saw, I sized the different areas of my apartment based on how much time I spend there. So my computer desk area is just like half of my table. I made the biggest, and I have my bookshelf behind me that has all my textbooks and other teaching resources on it. And then my bedroom area, and then of course my kitchen and bathroom, and my couch, and then like these other little chairs that are in my living room. I hardly ever sit in that, so those are really small. So I did color coding, and I also did the sizing option. And you could have, I did that resizing one on the computer in Paint, and then kind of drew in some connecting lines and wrote in some labels for you. But you could do it by hand, or you could do it on the computer, either way. So you don't necessarily have to do your home. You could. I think it's a good place to start, way to think about mapping different information. And you could do something like this where you talk about how much time you spend. You could talk about how much time other people in your home spend in different areas of the apartment and compare like a color-coded map for you versus a color-coded map for one of your siblings or some of the adults in your family, or a pet. Maybe you could color code a map of your home and show where one of your pets spends the most time or the least time. Another kind of map that I did was just thinking about like my neighborhood and the different places in my neighborhood that I spend. And I definitely, and I did one before March 14th, which was before school closed. Remember, the 13th was our last day together. At that point, I was spending time in my apartment and a lot of time at Bryant. But I also had a few other places that I went. I like to go to Red Elm Cafe on the weekends. I'd do some grocery shopping at Safeway. Every once in a while, I'd go to Fred Meyer. Classic Coffee is that drive-through coffee shop on Sprague that I like to get my coffee at. And I loved going up to Point Defiance Park, and I'd go there at least once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. And of course, Memos for burritos, maybe once a week. But since March 14th, now my world looks a little more like this, where I spend lots of time in my apartment. Don't get to go to Red Elm Cafe anymore. I'm so sad, but excited for when they get to open again. I don't quite go to Safeway as often because I try to just go grocery shopping once a week now. And when I do, I typically go to Fred Meyer because I know I can get everything I want when I go there. And I still go to Memos every once in a while to get a burrito. I still go to Classic Coffee, but maybe a little less than I did before. So I kind of tried to size my circles based on how much time I spend at these different places. I can't go to Point Defiance anymore because it's closed unless you live within walking distance. But I added a little bubble there's lots of little parks that are close by to my apartment, close-ish. So I'll walk to other different little parks in my neighborhood just to get outside and get some fresh air and see some trees and such. So there's another example of a kind of map that you can do that shows more information than just the physical space. This doesn't really show the physical space. It's kind of roughly like a map, north, south, east, west. The Bryant and Memos are both north of me, and Fred Meyer's kind of south west of me, but it's not an exact representation of the physical space by any means. All right, so your assignment is to create 2 maps. And you can do 2 totally different kinds of maps, or you can do like 2 maps that have the same information in different ways, kind of like with my apartment. I did the color coding way to show how much time I spend in one place, and then I did the resizing of the different areas to show how much time I spend in different places. Or you can do the same kind of map that has 2 different sets of information. Like when I did kind of my neighborhood, where I spend time in my neighborhood map, I had one that was pre-school closure, and then one that was kind of what it looks like now. So you could do the same kind of map for 2 different people's experiences or 2 different times. All different, be creative, and color coding and sizing is not the only way you can show different data. You can definitely be creative in how you show the information, but I just wanted to give you some ideas. So do a little brainstorming first for sure. Here's some brainstorming we did with some students, and we came up with places you've been going to, your neighborhood, your home, time spent in different areas of your home. You could do weekend versus weekdays, where you spend your time on the weekends versus a weekday, how frequently you've been doing different activities, and how you get, like, are you walking? How often do you walk to different places versus how often do you ride your bike to different places, things like that. And then, of course, we could talk about how much time a pet spends in your home in different places. Or one person suggested show how clean different areas of your home are. And you could do that by color coding or by sizing or some other system as well. So be creative, create 2 different maps showing 2 different things, either the same data, same information, 2 different ways, or 2 different sets of data. Either way, I want to see 2 different ideas, because it's when we start comparing these different ideas that we really start to reveal information about the world around us.